All right, here we are. Today in our conversation, we have David Pineo. David is a proud member of the Mohawk Nation in Ontario, Canada. His journey has been enriched by numerous teachings and life lessons, which have provided him with a diverse array of tools and practices. In 2009, a vision quest in Costa Rica inspired him to transition from his finance career to share his wisdom and guide a global tribe of men. And David has dedicated his life to passing on the teachings he has received from his mentors and ancestors. He is the founder and co guide of Men on Purpose, a private men's community that supports men on their hero's journey, helping them rise into leadership and create lives of freedom. Through the Xpansive Warrior movement, David and his team offer programs and retreats that include rites of passage ceremonies, archetypal frameworks, conscious communication, masculine embodiment, integrity, leadership, self love, breathwork, somatics, practices, and relationship skills. David is committed to empowering men and youth to become the most powerful versions of themselves and to create the lives they truly desire. He currently resides between Toronto, Canada, and Costa Rica. David, welcome to the conversation here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thanks for having
Mm,
me, bro. Excited to dive into this. I know we've been walking the path together for a little while now, and we've been looking to get this conversation aligned. So here we are. We are here. We are now. So excited to dive in and see what comes through.
yeah, brother. Absolutely. Very excited here. And in this moment, what is alive for you here?
Mm, yeah. Yeah. What's alive for me on this beautiful morning here in Costa Rica as we align is the gratitude for the life that I have created, despite the challenge, despite uh, the curveballs, I'll say, like the interesting gifts that I've been given in life to move through and different challenges that I've moved through, constantly coming back to the awareness and gratitude that, yeah, I am the creator and I've created this beautiful life and community and uh, people like you in my life, the allies walking the walk. I'm very present to that.
Mm,
It's like I'm not walking alone and this ability to create a beautiful life is, yeah, available to everybody. So it's like I'm inspired by that, and that's alive to me. It's like, okay, we're here to live the life that we truly desire and love. So that is it, man. That's what's alive for me right now in my heart.
beautiful. Yeah, yeah, those curveballs and the challenges have a unique flavor to um, that is important in the journey for sure.
Sir.
Yeah, well, and I'll check into for me, what's alive in this moment? Just excitement to have you on. As you mentioned, we've been working together for a bit now, walking the path, and to be able to bring the conversation forward, the stories forward in a way that we can share with others. That's exciting to me. And it's also Memorial Day weekend here in the States. So there's a lot of hustle and bustle going around, and it's just nice to take a pause here and find some perspective and gratitude for the journey. Take those moments to pause. I think lately I've been on a very fast paced schedule. So feeling that balance of what it means to hold both.
Yeah, bro. Thanks for
Yeah.
creating that space.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I am I'm curious because we're here to talk about the journey of life. This podcast, the focus is about rites of passage work, mentorship, and I think overall a theme, what it means to be human, and drawing on the stories of the past and remembering of that, how does it apply to the modern world that we find ourselves in.
Mm.
So, my first question for you, David, is when was the first time you no longer felt like a child, felt like a kid? Is there a moment, if you think back to your memory, where there was this mindset or experience that helped you put that into perspective?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I'd say for me, and this came, I would consider myself like a late bloomer for sure. Like I went into after high school, went into a little bit of college, and then went into business for myself. Not not necessarily legal business, but supplied parties, we'll say. Um,
Yep.
supplied a good time for a little while, and that was a lot of like escapism, and I could see like the immaturity of that, and just like the mm, definitely like a selfish, like I'm just looking for connection. I was just looking for connection around that. So to not necessarily stepping into my own authentic expression. I was just looking, okay, I can be popular and be accepted by others by taking on this avatar and this role. Uh, I would say like going through that experience was pretty profound and deep, and a lot of lessons that I learned inside of that phase and journey. From there, I went and escaped again. Beautiful escape though, to like Banff, Alberta and Vancouver and like Western Canada and snowboarding, and had all these kind of experiences, but I still saw myself as a boy, It's like I'm still kind of like, okay, I can just like it's like everything's just for my own pleasure and my own fun. And okay, I'm gonna go have
Mm,
these experiences and create a life that's just based on me. I just need to go have fun. Uh, I would say for me, when it started coming online, um, on my mom's side of the family, there were a lot of deaths started happening on the Mohawk lineage side of my family. And then I had met cousins of mine that I'd never met before through that Mohawk lineage that started to create ceremony and started to teach me this law of reciprocity and how we walk and how we honor others, and really started to have me look outside of myself. Where it's like, okay, we're all connected here, and there's ways that we can contribute to one another, and there's a game much bigger than me that's available. Because up until then, it was a lot of like survival, just my own pleasure, just yeah, that was my whole walk of life. It's survival and pleasure. It's like avoiding pain or seeking pleasure, but for
mm,
me, not actually
yeah.
looking outside of myself and looking at the impacts outside of myself. So I would say it was that, and then really going deep into personal development work. A lot of programs that I did were based on that, like shining that mirror, holding that mirror up, where it's like, hey, we're actually all connected here, and when we walk that way, there's an impact on others if we're walking in a selfish way or self-serving way constantly, versus looking at the impact and putting ourselves in other people's shoes, and what are those actual impacts in our human relationships and interactions. So I would say those are the two initial seeds that had me see that.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah, that brings up so many different directions to be able to go in here. And
Mhm.
I think that story, it's pretty common. I heard you say you were a bit of a late bloomer in that. And in my experience, I've noticed that being a theme in the culture here, where especially for boys and young men, there is not one defining moment often that's offered in the culture, the dominant Western culture, to help usher that young man into that next stage in a meaningful way with more maturity, that type of thing. And I'm curious if you've seen that in your experiences too. I know your personal story, it sounds very similar too, but yeah, anything more you want to say on that?
Yeah, what's coming to me when you're sharing that is looking at that the common theme there was meeting men that I did want to follow. So my cousins and their how they held themselves and their leadership roles in the indigenous community here, and then on the personal development side, and and business side, as I started going to that, there was mentors there that I was looking to follow, you know? So it's like
Mm.
that was really the turning point was like, oh, like there's other ways to live, and these are men of high value that I saw were walking walks and living lives that I would want to step into and live into. So I feel that's the common theme. Absolutely. I know we're the podcast here is on a rite of passage and really looking at that, of like looking at where are these mentors or these allies, men that we can look up to and follow inside of their leadership, and that part of like the hero's journey where it's like, okay, there's some guide or mentor or someone that's going to come in to support us to find our authentic expression. And that's always, it's a key piece of the puzzle, right? So that's what's coming through in that. It's like really being in that awareness and inviting like men and youth to seek that. Like who out there do we admire that we would want to walk that same walk and design a life similar to the life that they have, and really um, foster those type of relationships intentionally.
Hmm. Yeah. In my own development from being a kid, boy, to becoming a young adult man, there was also I was a bit of a late bloomer myself, also seeking a lot of um, just attention. It's all about me, pleasure, just seeking something that was trying to fulfill a part of myself in places that I thought might help that, but
Mm-hmm.
later down the road, it ended up not. And I had some positive male role models around me, my dad, my uncle, but even so, I didn't really get to experience too many of those male mentors that were really on this path. And so it sounds like you did when you were on your mom's side of your family with the Mohawk Nation. That was when you started to experience some of that. So whereabouts in your story of your life were you there? Were you open to some of those new ways of thinking? Was that something that you was pretty normal to you, or was it a little challenging?
Yeah. Uh, Great question. So it's interesting because it's like both of these mentors came in around the same time. So I moved back. I was living out west for 8 years, about 8 years, and I moved back into my mom's house at age 30. Really nothing to show for it, just like back into my parents' house and like starting over. And I was super open. I'm like, there's got to be something here. So I was in that inquiry, like working with a business mentor at the time, and really wanting to bring myself back online and find something that inspired me. So that business mentor came in, and then I started opening myself up to, okay, well, a lot of people that are around me that are grounded and creating powerful lives have some sort of spiritual connectedness or groundedness or a connection to a creator, God, or whatever that is for them. That's what I noticed. Like they were the highest level of expression and power, not necessarily in religion, but it's like there's some sort of connection to a creator, a higher power. So I was open to that piece. So I was like researching different religions and exploring different paths that I could go down to see what resonated with. And then in that season, that's when my cousins came in and really started teaching our Mohawk teachings and creator, and because it was interesting, my grandma, she'd always had, it was very clear that she was a Mohawk woman, but she never expressed it.
Mm.
Like we would go to powwows once in a while, like once a year when we were young, and after I moved away, it was like, yeah, very, very rarely, but it wasn't like this grounded, like, hey, this is who we are, this is the lineage, this background. We need to stand strong in it because there was a lot of repression in her generation. So residential schools and that whole generation was like, hey, don't speak your language, don't talk about it. And so it was like kind of like silently in her house, but everywhere at her house, it's like, okay, this is like a powerful thing, but I was never from her. It wasn't like, hey, stand. stand proud in this part of yourself. And then when my cousins came in, and that really came online, and I was really open to those teachings at that point. I was like, what really resonates with me? And that part of my lineage like really resonated. Like I love being in nature and working with the elements and yeah, connecting in that way and having my creator linked to yeah, nature, animals, elements. It's like it just resonates with me. I can see it in my walk, you know. It's like it's very synchronistic and supports me the most. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. What I'm hearing too is this part of your journey where there's a bit of a failure to launch. You're out
Mm.
in the world pursuing some pathways that didn't lead you perhaps to where you wanted to go, ending back up at home at 30, which I think is pretty common for a lot of men these days, and having that bit of a descent, which definitely has a rite of passage theme in itself too, and then starting to find your way, this resonance with practices in relationships that are very old, that our ancestors have carried for a long time, it sounds like. So I'm curious, what was the relationship like at that point for you in terms of your practices, your spirituality, of just what it means to be human? Was there a bit of a call and response where you were receiving feedback just from life, from the community, from the earth around? How do you gauge that you're on the right path, or at least going in the right direction?
Yeah. Yeah. At that point it was mm, just going back to that moment. I was like a total sponge at that time for sure. It's like just like really just taking everything in that I could on like a personal development side and on like a spiritual development side. I would say it was a few years after that too, like started opening up to like plant medicine experiences. Sweat Lodge was in there a lot as well too, like sitting with brothers around that. That was kind of like a key pillar during that time as well. So really going deep into those practices, learning to work with sacred medicines that my family had as well too. So sage and tobacco and sweetgrass and working with our medicines and bringing those in through intentional connection and sitting with those on a consistent basis. So yeah, there's all these little pieces that I started to add in and implement in, like going on nature walks, like every morning, getting out, going for a walk, like connecting, giving gratitude, and just observing, sitting with nature. So those all started coming online
Mm,
on top of like just being addicted to like personal development too, like personal development, business development, learning psychology, communication. It's just like I was just like all in. I'm like, okay, I'm done suffering. I'm here at 30 and I'm like, I'm not, I feel like I'm just on a hamster wheel. So it's like, okay, I'm done with that. Like what's going to be the walk and how can I bring more intentionality into the life that I can create? And that's when that really came online, where it's like, oh, like I'm 100% responsible here to create the life that I desire. It's not on anybody else. And there's uh, nothing outside of myself that is creating this life. I can point outside of myself, but it's not working up until this
mm,
point, up until 30, you know. That's like,
yeah.
okay, starting to own my shit and lean into that
Mm,
slowly, slowly. That was definitely an evolution. It wasn't like, oh, okay, this is how it goes. But yeah, it's definitely a lot of lessons were served
yeah.
on that journey to
Yeah.
really ground the walk home.
Beautiful. Yeah. And there's a line to walk between being 100% responsible and also, I see in the dominant culture, there's this hyper individualism sometimes
Mm.
that, speaking of men's work and things like that, the lone wolfing type
Mhm.
of mentality where, uh, when things get hard, we don't ask for support. We're just going to go lone wolf it. So it's the balance. How perhaps you could speak a little bit on that and what you see now in, I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but you work with a lot of men. So what does that look like as you see them in some of their journeys between finding that balance between responsibility for ourselves in life and not lone wolfing it, not needing to do this alone?
Yeah, I could definitely speak as a recovering lone wolf. I have to sit
Yeah,
with that part of myself
yeah,
every day, I feel.
me too.
Sure. Yeah, it's definitely a very strong way of men wanting to show up that way. We've definitely learned that that mentality. So as far as like the balance between that, it's really sort of guiding what's worked for me is like creating frames around it. So and intentional uh, time to like sit with creating those frameworks. So the 100% responsible piece is like looking at, and you know this, I call it like resetting the game board. It's like looking at every area of our life and like, okay, cool. Where can I be more responsible and create more intentionality with each of these areas of my life, and where am I allowing outside circumstances to dictate how I'm showing up in that area? Because that's where we're not responsible. It's like, oh, well, what about this? And it's like everything comes up, right? Where it's like there's the economy, there's my family, there's my spouse, there's the whatever it is, right? It's like until it's like, oh, I'm choosing this and how to show up in this area of my life. Do I want to make a different choice or create something different? It's like getting at the whiteboard and let erase the whiteboard and reset the game board in a way that is aligned and has integrity to move forward and create the life that we desire. So it's like that piece of like the 100% responsible piece of we're responsible for choosing how we show up in each area of our life and in our relationships, and just owning that piece and looking at, okay, is there wounds here or things that are causing resistance that I'm not able to actually step fully into my creation here. And then those are the reps that we get to play with. But until we set the game board and know what we're playing, it's like we don't actually get to see where those resistances and things come up and be responsible for those. And then as far as like the lone wolf piece, it's like really looking at, I love bringing this in. And I just shared this recently as well too, is like looking at our rings of influence. And this is kind of like the king archetype, like going into the king of like, okay, the king's sitting there with a community, right? If the king's a leader and an embodied leader and a humble leader, it's like there's people around to support the king. So it's like actually getting clear on who that inner circle is and who our allies are and who our expanders are and who are I call it like associates. And then there's everybody else in the kingdom as well too, right? So it's like looking at getting super clear on who's who in those rings and creating communication and intentionality around that. So we have that accountability and awareness, and people have a window into what we're up to. So we don't have to lone wolf. It's like there's availability for people to support. And I feel like that's for me too. It's like I'll close that off. It's like that my own deserving. I don't deserve for people to help me. I help others, you know. It's like I have that piece. It's like that's why I'm in coaching. It's like in guiding people and doing this work. It's because there's part of me, there's an interesting layer of me where it's like I feel this like it's like a karmatic scale, you know, where I feel, oh, I messed up here and oh, I'd hurt this person and I was unfaithful in these relationships in my past and all this. So it's like, oh, I better go help a bunch of people so I can balance out the karma. So I've been like really letting go of that as a paradigm versus just stepping into my authentic truth of who I am and in servitude, but also serving myself and allowing others to support that vision and support my journey.
It's powerful. Yeah. Yeah. I love the topic of resetting the game board and how we're doing that. Some work we do together with other men supporting us. You mentioned the coaching and getting into helping other men on their path. So I'm curious, how did you get into this work? I know we're talking a bit about your story too. Was there a specific moment that led you into stepping 2 feet into this committed?
Yeah, I love this story. So So back before 20, I would say 2018, 2017 to 2019, I was in finance, maybe 2016. It was a while. I was in finance prior to stepping into this work. Before that, I had a fitness company. So I was personal training, and I was also training other personal trainers to become their own businesses and entities under my umbrella franchise. So it's interesting looking back at both of those roles, like leadership roles that I had in each of those businesses. So I had clients, so personal training clients, and then I was mentoring other personal trainers. And then in the finance, I had a bunch of clients in private lending and life insurance and estate planning and um, tax support and working with like high net business owners in that realm. But when I look back at it, like the common theme that I really fulfilled me in that was I was going deeper with people. It's like, well, why did they start that business? Or why do they have the relationships that they have? Or why do they feel in the fitness world? It was a lot of like self-judgment piece of like bringing in like, why do they want to get healthy? Like what's underneath that? Like what's important to them? So I'd really go deep into those veins and from my own personal development and studying communications and like human psyche and everything. It's like I was just like super curious of like, okay, well, what's the actual intention? Why are we doing what we're doing here? Versus like, oh yeah, here's a fitness plan and I'll come walk you through the reps, or yeah, here's a financial plan and see you later. We'll check in once a year or once a quarter. I'd want to like build deeper connection and relationship and understand well what was making them do the things that they did. So I would really hold space for that and yeah, like support with relationships or support with like mental health or whatever it is on all levels. So when I look at it, like I was really doing that work for many years before making the shift. But what the real game changer was and the catalyst was in 2019 coming down to Costa Rica. I knew that that avatar, that version of myself wasn't my authentic expression in the finance at the time. So I was coming up to my 40th year, 40th cycle, February of 2020. So I had a good brother of mine. He's a health coach. I'm like, hey man, come to Costa Rica. It's like instead of like me paying for your program and going through that, just come with me and live with me for a few months and we'll do it like live in person. So I want to detox and just reset and cleanse everything. So mind, body, spirit. So we rented a house up in the mountains, like no Wi-Fi. It was just like I just want to detox from everything, knowing that there was a message that was meant to come through. So it's like this extended sabbatical vision quest. There's plant medicine in there. It was just this long ceremony of clarity that I really committed to. Just cleanse my physical vessel, cleanse my mind, cleanse my heart, and just allow whatever message was meant to come through in that time frame. And that's when it became very clear. I saw these dots connected. It's like what actually lights me up, what fulfills me, like what's the path. And I'd been doing men's work prior to that. I was part of men's groups and communities in Toronto, helped with like retreats. And so I was already in that work. And that was when the audit came through. It was like, oh, well, that's what really lights me up is doing that type of work. It's like it'd always been a thing on the side, something that I did or participated in, or just how I was and showing up. But that's why I really looked at the deepest fulfillment that I got and the deepest gratitude that others were giving, reflecting back to me for having me in their life was around that work. And that it was just a potent like message just came through from creator, from spirit. It was like you're a guide, you're a mentor, you're a bridge. And I got the visual of like this bridge. And then the next message was right now, men need your support. And
Mm,
this is like COVID wasn't even a thing at that point. It was just like
yeah.
this little like rumors of something happening. And I'm in a mountain with no internet. I'm like I was just going to town, go to the beach, and people like talking about, oh, have you heard of this thing happening in China or whatever was going on? I'm like, yeah, whatever. It's like
Uh-huh.
if it gets potent enough or powerful enough, then I'll hear about it. I don't watch the news, I don't read newspapers. So it's like if it's important, I'll hear about it. So we're in Costa Rica, and it's like just like these inklings of something happening, and but that was like I really got that message at that point because when everything shut down, it was like survival mode, especially for a lot of men in my community. Okay, that job doesn't exist anymore. I'm not available to do that. Or there is an opportunity here to either sink in that system or rise into creating something from my own efforts and my own self-expression. So that's what's really come online, is like guiding men through their hero's journey. Like, what is
Mm,
it that really lights you up that you want to bring into the world that can create a life of freedom? We can bring it online and serve the world and create abundance for yourself. So it's been a lot of that work of like initiations, guiding men through that whole process of like, no, I am valuable. No, I do have these superpowers. Yeah, I can actually provide value and create something and put it out into the world that others will get value from. So yeah, that's the Cole's notes of the journey, man.
thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm.
It's interesting how I know you mentioned COVID, which was a very hard time for some people. And in my personal relationships, I know there were some people that did worse,
Mm.
like health wise during COVID, and other people that responded in a way where it was a catalyst for them to really step into
Mm.
a deeper, more authentic way of being, perhaps. So, yeah, I'm hearing the thread of perhaps one of the reasons of doing the inner work, challenging ourselves in that to look at these edges and limiting stories is training for life
Mm.
in a way, and how we can show up in service in that.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw it, and I totally get like the struggle and the pain and the the hard journey that was for a lot of people. And for me, just blessed enough that I had like really done enough inner looking that it was a blessing for me to really full on step into that work. It's like, oh, this is the sign of like, okay, I'm not going back to any of these systems that don't align. I'm just going to stay the path here. And I feel that's the piece of like resetting the game board in a way that's fully authentic is allows us to see that is an opportunity, like sees these
Mm,
challenges as an opportunity of like where can I reset my core values of what's truly important to me. And often it's things like that. So it could be a COVID or a family death or getting sick, or there's like often it takes like, okay, I need this massive crumbling of the system that I'm in right now or the life that I've created to erase the whiteboard and create newly. But the invitation is we can do that any day, like any moment, like right now. I could erase this whiteboard behind me and create it newly. It's like, okay, what's the new vision, right? So it's like as human beings, we have that ability, which is beautiful. It's like we can always stop and reset. I feel the trap is we feel we can't.
yeah.
We've got bills, we've got this, we've got it's like, yeah, there's responsibilities there too, but how can we reset the game around those responsibilities in a way that's a little more aligned?
Mm,
And again, it may not be an overnight thing, but it's like starting to put those bricks in place, those key foundations that are based on core values, and then building from there.
right, right. Yeah, I like how you're bringing that awareness in of we can create these scenarios that allow us to go through a transformative experience without needing to wait for the big crisis that happens in life sometimes. And so that reminds me of what a rite of passage could be, a
Mm-hmm.
journey for a young man or an adult man.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically speaking to men, that's been our experiences. And I know that women have their own journeys as well. But so let's speak about creating the container for some of that transformation, because what is it about our psyche and being human that loves a good context and container to be created for us to totally go through a transformative experience, coming through the other side, bringing our gifts forward to be in service to life, to our families, relationships, to community? What is the magic of that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what's coming through is like that, like with this theme of like rite of passage, it's like creating an intentional act of like facing our fears. It's like, where can I put myself in a situation to move through those edges and be with them and have support to be with them as well too. It's like I feel like that's the frame of a rite of passage. And it's like I feel as men innately like we really want to expand and grow and rise into that fullest version. I feel what I see is most common right now is that we just feel with a lot of men, it's like it's just patterning. We've just been in these like patterns for so long that we don't pause. It's like pausing for a moment and really looking at like what is that next season of life? It's like even living life as through seasons, like auditing each season. It's like, okay, well, what is it that this season can bring me? Where can I push that edge? Where can I like create a container of rite of passage to push myself this next season? What are those key edges that are important to me right now? And it could be health, right? It could be health, it could be business, it could be whatever it is, and looking for some sort of support and guidance to move that through. You know, we're living a beautiful time where we have this thing called the internet. So even if someone's not financially capable, we're like, yo, I'm going to hire a mentor or a fitness trainer or a rite of passage guide or a business coach or whatever. It's like everything's online. So it's like, how can we just create a season to focus on a version of ourselves in each season? So that's what's coming through for me is like really looking at it's intentionality. It's like what is and it's awareness. Like every morning in my gratitude practice, awareness is like one of the top ones. So we're not aware that this is available. We're not aware that we can shift. And this was me back in before I was 30, I wasn't aware. I was just kind of drifting with whatever came to me between moments of like suffering and moments of pleasure. It's like suffering, pleasure, suffering, pleasure. It's like just like bouncing around in a boat in the sea. It's like, yeah, this is an area of pleasure. This is an area of suffering. So it's like without the awareness, that's really how we end up. We're just drifting.
Mm.
So it's really looking at creating intentionality, and anybody can sit down and do that. But I feel the common thing is like pausing. There's such a common theme where it's like I got to keep going, I got to keep going. It's like we're on the hamster wheel. It's like I got to keep busy, got to make money. I have these responsibilities which are very real. And if we're going to keep creating and moving and honoring those responsibilities, is it worth pausing for a moment to see if there's something a little more aligned that we could lean into and getting some support to move into that versus just keeping on that suffering and pleasure hamster wheel versus like creation
Hmm.
coming through.
Yeah. Yeah. We sometimes need a little encouragement to pause.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. In what ways do you like to pause in your life? Are there some practices that you hold?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, every morning it's pausing. I love breath, just breathing in intentionally and nature. So I go for a little walk. I'm here in Costa Rica right now. So go for a little walk in nature and pause and just not bring any intentional uh, thinking or any intention to those practices other than just being in them and meditating after that and just sitting and seeing what comes up. Writing has been very powerful for me as well too. So just taking that moment each day to take that on. And then every season, like some sort of a break in the patterns. It's like I've got businesses going and projects that I'm working with and clients that I'm working with. So it's like a lot of like a lot of input, a lot of like creations happening. So every season pausing and just kind of shutting all of that off for a time frame and just allowing the next visions to come through, clarity to come through. That could be just getting away on my own for a couple of days and just sitting in nature and listening. That could be a plant medicine ceremony. It could be a retreat. It could be something. Yeah,
Hmm.
but it's available for everyone. If we're not available to jump into a full retreat or financially have the capacity for these things, it's like nature and meditation and breath are they're all free and they're very effective.
Hmm.
So I bring in like a mini called like the mini quest in our initiation. So it's like a little mini vision quest where it's like having guys like no technology and get in nature for 24 to 48 hours. And a lot of men have never done that. not for a long, long time anyway, and probably never in their adult life, where it's like, hey, just go do that and see what happens, see what comes through. So even in that little short stint, the resistance to even go do it is mind blowing. It's like, oh, I can't schedule it. I can't stop. It's like it's a day, right? So it's like guiding men through just having a powerful conversation. Don't lone wolf it. You're supported. Make the requests. Like it's like that whole part of ourself. Bringing that piece online is powerful as well too, to create the space where we can go within and get the message, get the inner wisdom, the inner guidance.
Mm, yes, yes. Yeah, I like how you put it with the internet. We have this unique technology that's come out of nowhere in human existence that we get to be connected with now. And it comes at a time when I think people are feeling such a longing for community. And I'm curious if you want to talk about your network a little bit more. Uh, I know you mentioned working within seasons as well. So if you want to share anything in regards to what that looks like and perhaps what somebody might be feeling who's ready for it, that type of work, because it's definitely not for everybody, at least
Mm.
in my experience, where they are on their journey. You really got to be ready to get uncomfortable in a way. It's also fun, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what specifically, brother, to share on that, like in the season of what I'm creating right now, you know,
Yeah,
any,
what offerings do you have going on within your online communities and coaching
mm,
practices?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm in this like season of like community growth again. So I'm in the learning side of it and not lone wolfing this piece as well too. So I was bringing coaches for this because I'm definitely not a well, I won't say that. I am learning technology and learning to embrace and loving creating things on this machine that we're talking on right now. So it's it's a journey. That's a rite of passage in itself for me, for sure. So bringing in like the community build side of it. So for me, I've always had a commitment to have something available for any man that I connect with or is in my network in my community. So right now it's building a private online community space and merging it from Facebook onto another platform where all of like the core like courses and programs and offerings can just kind of live in one spot and also create some accountability pods as well too and connections where men can really connect with each other. So having weekly calls to be able to ground in and play the game, reset the game board and play the game together. So it's like getting out of that lone wolf mentality where it's like where can we all gather and play the game and do the reps together. So in the season of creating that right now, so that's the Men on Purpose community. So that's exciting and growing out. So they're just doing all the technical additionals to that. It's active right now with a lot of the men that are in the initiation. So that's happening. Going to be launching fully, I would say, by the end of this quarter, like really getting that out to the public. It's been alumni and clients that have been in that journey right now and in that community. So yeah, I have one-on-one mentorship in a program called The Game, and that's really resetting the game board. You and I have done a lot of work this similar to what that is, like resetting the game of life and our hero's journey, like really bringing the awareness into our hero's journey and setting the game board intentionally in all areas of our life and to really play that game effectively, it's doing deep inner work. So really looking at where we're sabotaging ourselves, where our mother, father, inner child wounds are coming up. Is there some somatic work that we can work through and release some energies? Mini questing, taking time for ourselves, like really getting clarity on who we are and what it is that we want to create. So there's that, and then the journey home, which you're part of right now too. It's like really doing that as a group. So going through a group initiation process, very similar principles as well too, and guiding men through those different quests and rite of passage work, and then linking all of those into retreats here in Costa Rica. So I've got 7-day retreats down here. So anybody who is participating in those initiation programs has the ability to come down to a retreat at some point in Costa Rica. So it's a 7-day journey that I've finally launched like a full 7 day one. Here I've guided 3 day, 4 day, and I'm like, I just had this vision, kept having the vision of like, no, 7 days is like potent because then we can mix the deep rite of passage work. I can bring in more community. So I'm very blessed down here that have beautiful community inside of men leading Temascal, which is Sweat Lodge here in Central America, indigenous elders that are here that we can ground with and gain wisdom from. We've got beautiful people that hold space and medicine singers for plant medicine ceremony, and it's unlimited, the playground that we have here. So really doing men's embodiment work and primal work and healing work with the elements and waterfalls and private beaches. And yeah, it's like it's next level. I could do 12 retreats and still have the brothers journey in different spaces and places every single retreat. So it's like
Mm,
an unlimited playground that I'm blessed to play in. And then the end of that, as men go through these initiations organically, this offering called Path to Purpose came online, where it's like, okay, we know where the hero's journey is, we know where we're aligned, we know what our gifts are, and self-expression is. It's actually supporting men and holding that accountability on bringing their offerings online. So I've helped a lot of brothers do that too. It's like, hey, let's create financial freedom in something that lights us up. So
mm.
yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. That's I know we're getting to the end of our conversation here, and one other theme I'm in mind with is integration. And I'm
Mm.
hearing some of those offerings you're talking about. There's definitely themes of integration there, like the last one you mentioned too. And um, but I would be curious to hear from you more on how you view integration in these experiences. And I'll just speak for a moment too. You know, as you mentioned, we've been working together a bit, and I have done a couple vision quests myself in the past, and now this program with you. But I do feel a really big shift with myself currently going on, and I think it's coming in a way where I'm really digging into some of these stories that have been running in
Mm.
my head for how I make decisions in the world, and showing up weekly on our calls and with the other men too. I get to really practice how that applies to my life, how I might be sabotaging myself all the time, and starting to see the shifts, which is really powerful. But if you want to share anything more on just integration, what that looks like, and even to bring these gifts back to our own communities in our own necks of the woods.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, brother. Yeah, I'm a huge believer of integration. And that's really when I was creating these initiations, it's like that's why they're a minimum 90 days, like really looking at extending the opportunity to do the reps. And I appreciate you sharing that. It's like bringing the awareness in of like where we're getting in our own way and how we're sabotaging ourselves and how we're really holding ourselves back and creating the life that we truly desire is like the first step. But then it's like doing the reps to experience ourselves as the opposite of that story that we have, that inner story. Because I have that inner story where I'm not good enough, whatever I do is never going to be enough, that I'm always comparing myself to others, that I really bring in uh, a lot of like guilt and shame in those where it's like it's never going to be enough. That's where my suffering lives. Inside of that, if I'm aware of that I've got that operating, that story that came in when I was young, I just learned and downloaded that software and I operate from that software. If I just see it as that and name it as the software that's been downloaded and give it a name, so it is what it is. It's like it's an entity that I can observe outside of myself and choose as a human being. I get to choose to show up differently and create different ways of showing up.
Mm,
Where I'm of high contribution, I'm of high value, I'm always doing enough and more than enough and blessing the world and just showing up every day. So it's like really looking at and reframing how I see the world and operating from that way and loving and honoring that piece of myself that wants to bring them back that story. My ego wants to keep me small and safe. And that's okay. It's like this inner child version of myself. It's like, okay, like it's like yeah, don't put yourself out there, move into that edge. Like really honoring that part of myself is a powerful thing too, where it's like, yeah, it's like What was yours? Jiminy Critic, right? So
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
sitting with Jiminy Critic and giving him some love in the morning, Hey man, thanks for showing up. Love you, bro. Don't
Right.
need you today. You can stay home and hang out, hold space at the house for me. Uh,
Exactly.
but
Yep.
it's like having that moment to be able to do that in the awareness, I feel is like the powerful piece of integration where it's doing the reps. It's like catching it and going into that inspired action that we created in our game board anyway. It's like, okay, catch it, action, catch it, action. Maybe catch it, sit with it. Maybe we're not actioning. Maybe we're sitting somatically with like, oh, this is really potent today. I'm going to give myself some space to like do that inner self-love work and love Jiminy Critic a little bit more and maybe just do some breath and go into nature and move this energy through. Maybe there's some anger that wants to come through around that. So it's like really looking at what's the opportunity in the moment that's going to best serve us
Mm.
in that moment with what comes up. And over time, yeah, then we're more aware and we have the ability to move quicker through these different energies and awarenesses and move back into creation mode or into rest mode, whatever we choose, but choosing it powerfully.
I like that. Yeah. Choosing it.
Hmm.
Beautiful. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to mention, share that didn't get to come up in our conversation as we work towards closing this conversation out?
Nothing in particular, brother. But yeah, definitely appreciating the time to come in and have these conversations. I always love having these types of conversations and see what comes through. And hopefully there's been some value to the men or women or whoever comes across this transmission and inside of like a new level of awareness and ability to see the world from a space of creation and possibility every single day. So it's there, and I know it can get challenging and it can get tough, and even especially in one of those like deep, dark, challenging times, it's very, very, very difficult to see that possibility. So just putting that invitation out to reach out. I'm here, you're here. I know you're like that kind of man as well too, just to have a conversation. So opening up that invitation, if any man's feeling stuck and like I don't see that there's another possibility, definitely reach out. I'm always here to have those conversations and support in any way that I can, or join the community as well too. So happy to share the links with that and be around other like-minded men going through the reps and the awareness, the daily awareness to choose possibility each day. So
Mm,
I'll leave it with that invitation.
beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, and I'll put links to get connected with you um, wherever I post this in the notes. But would you like to just share as well for the audio part where people can find you, how they could get connected, what the best way is to get into the action?
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, the link will be in there. So it's Men on Purpose. So that's the program or the community lives on School on the platform School. So free to jump in there. We do a monthly call called the Fireside Sit Down, and as we get going, it'll likely be weekly as the team grows as well too. So Fireside Sit Down, you'll see that, and that's open. So it's free to everybody just to come in, link up with other like-minded men. Once a month, we dive into a topic, so it's a virtual men's circle. So come join us for that, definitely, and integrate into the community. And then from there, I am David Pineo on Instagram, David Pineo on Facebook, and yeah, those would be the best spots and quickest ways to connect with me direct. So appreciate that, brother.
Love it. Yeah. David, brother, thank you for coming on, having the conversation here. I have a feeling that we might do this again sometime.
Anytime, man.
And
Anytime.
yeah, beautiful conversation. So thank you.
All right, appreciate it, brother. Keep doing what you're doing. Thanks for creating the space.